What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on these analysis. We're going to be looking at Bitcoin today. We're going to be going over some technicals and some indicators. So we've been running down this downward sloping trend line. This is pretty much what we're waiting for right now. This is all everybody's watching. Everybody's watching the same trend line on every chart you look at, on X, on Instagram, wherever you're looking, Google. This is the trend line right here that everyone's looking at. So when we get that break and retest and we move up higher, this thing's probably going to explode, if I'm being honest. We'll see. We don't know when that's going to happen because we can get a repeat where we just ride up a little bit and then we reject down and continue the same move down and create fresh lows. Hopefully the bottom's in, but we don't know because this could have, a lot of people thought this was a bottom. Especially after a move like this, you're like, oh man, we're starting to create a nice little uptrend, makes sense, and then boom. And we were saying on the way up here, like we were hoping that this was a bottom, but we were also saying, as we were running up here, we were also saying that running into this could give us some trouble, and it did give us trouble. And it pushed down lower and created fresh lows. So it's pretty much the exact same thing that I said over here. We're pushing here. It's a bullish sign, that we're creating higher highs, higher lows, but we have to break this, retest, and hold that and move up. And we have to break some horizontal levels of support and resistance so we can hold those and continue up and then make this that established low. But I think overall, it's still looking very good. We're looking bearish short term, but I think mid to longer term, this is an absolute buy. It's Bitcoin. It's hard money. If you know anything about the US dollar, you know that it's always going to decrease in value as they turn the money printers on. They can always just print it out of thin air. There's only a finite amount of Bitcoin, 21 million supply, and there's less than that. With all the Bitcoin adoption, you see some states are passing these things. So the supply is definitely dwindling down big time. MicroStrategy just alone has 500,000. One company, 500,000, and then you have a bunch of other companies, MetaPlanet, Mara, Riot, all these companies buying Bitcoin as well, CleanSpark. So you have a bunch of people that are jumping on the Bitcoin strategy movement. So I definitely believe there's going to be a supply shock, and this thing can go crazy after that happens. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was just a shakeout. So the big dogs, hedge funds, all these guys can start getting in, scare people off. We almost touched our old highs here, and we swept them. We have done that before as well. So this isn't something that we've never seen before. This has happened. It was a 30. Let me double check really quick. It was a 32% drop. And this is something that we've seen before taking off, where we had a nice move up, and then we had a nice pullback of 22%, back to this move here before taking off. And then we had another one here where we're in the middle of the bull cycle. We had a sharp pullback, 40%, and then we broke above this old high, ran up. We were thinking, hey, this thing's never going to come down. We're going to the moon. And then shook a bunch of people out with a 40% move and then took off. So this isn't anything out of the ordinary. We've seen this before. These large pullbacks in the middle of bull cycles, bull runs. So it definitely happens. Even here, before we had this leg up higher, we pulled back 33%. So, it makes sense, this is what it does. We pulled back 31.76%, and with time, these pullbacks should get smaller and smaller, and the gains should be smaller and smaller. That logarithmic regression idea, because the more people adopt it, the more money you need to move it, and then you need more money to move it down and more money to move it up, which is going to eventually stabilize the price a little bit with time, of course. I think things will be looking good long term. On the SMAs, on the daily, we're underneath all three. We definitely want to reclaim that and get above this 200 for sure. On the weekly, we got a strong bounce off the 50 week, very strong. That's a great sign. We've seen it before we had these run-ups. We've touched the 50 before taking off. Almost touched the 50 here, took off. We broke above the 50 and took off. And when you break underneath, you have the exact opposite, where you break underneath the 50 week and you can break down severely. But you can see once you break that 50, the yellow line, you get some severe moves to the upside. So we're getting a bounce off. So let's see if this acts as a trampoline and shoots price up higher. On the Bollinger Bands, we got to move off of the green band and we push up to the blue, and now we're kind of in between. So let's see if we get a move back to the blue band. And on the weekly, we closed outside of the Bollinger Bands, but we don't spend too much time outside of it until we get a strong sustainable move. And we already closed back inside. So let's see if we get a move to the blue band here. On the RSI, we're looking very good. We closed back above it, got a retest, and now it looks like we could potentially be pushing higher to have some sustainable strength underneath price. We're pushing back to the midline and eventually, hopefully, to overbought territory. And on the weekly, looks like we're trying to get some kind of double bottom or something like that. So let's see if it's a dead cat bounce and we continue on down. But hopefully this is the turning point. As you can see here, we made it down to 44 before we rallied in September. And we made it down to 44 before we rallied in September 2023. And we're currently down to 42.7. So let's see if we get that nice move up and we can get something like this or something like this right here. That would be perfect. Get to overbought territory and a sustainable move. On the daily, we're creating higher highs, higher lows. It looks like we got a minor pullback, but we're trying to make our way back to this orange moving average. And the volume is dwindling down to the downside, which is a good sign. We want to see that happen and start seeing those green candles start to form. On the weekly, we're still bearish. We're still in positive territory, but it's looking bearish. So we just need these red candles to start dwindling down and see this blue start to curl back up. So if you measure out the first leg and measure it to the second leg, it's slightly shorter than this second move. And then if we move it up higher to match the second move, this second move, which is larger than the first move, is still shorter than what we see here on global liquidity. This is a much larger move. And for the first leg up, this move here is this, and this move here is this, or I'll measure it out. You have a 92% move. And then on this one here, you have a 107% move. So if this run on global liquidity is already significantly higher than these two, maybe this leg will be much higher than 92 and 107 here. Let's see how it plays out. I mean, it's just speculation. I don't really know, but we'll see what happens. Also, from the bottom, we are about 98 days out from the bottom. We were thinking that potentially this was the bottom. And we were saying if we measured it out from there, that would have been 69 days. But that's obviously not the case. This would have been the bottom, which was 96 days, and we're currently 100 days out. So if this is the bottom, then we're only here. For this entire move up, this crazy large move up, we're only down here. So Bitcoin will have a lot of room to run. That's all I'm saying. Because when we were saying, theoretically, if this was the bottom at 69, we were saying, if that's the bottom, then we're still here. And this leg here was going to be somewhere in between here. But clearly, this move here, this bottom, local bottom here, before we got this fresh low, was just us making our way down here. So let's see what ends up happening. It could be a large move to the upside. I'm excited to see what happens. Hopefully no economic data gets in the way of that, whether it's the unemployment rate, inflation. Inflation came out great today. Even though the market reacted negatively to it, the inflation report came out amazing. So You love to see that. I mean, we're still coming back. We're making a recovery off of the whole tariff situation. But I think it might be short-term noise temporarily. I also see on this chart here, which I think is pretty interesting. This is Bitcoin divided by the VIX. So we have this trend line where we touch on these massive wicks. So this is a monthly chart. So we still have 19 days left. So let's see. Every time we've touched this, we get a sharp move to the upside, as you can see. So we just touched it on the other day. So let's see what the next move is, and let's see how it plays out. I mean, we ended up getting sharp moves off of this. This was the COVID bottom. So with this COVID bottom, you can see as we just shot straight up from here. And then in 2015, we shot straight up from here, and so on. So we're going to pull fibs and see if there's some kind of correlation between. So from here, we'll pull this fib here. And you can see we made it to the 886, bounced off the trend line. We got some resistance at the 618. And we'll pull it to the next one. Here we bounced right off of the freaking 886. So we made it past the 886 here. We bounced right off the 886 and shot up. And then off of this one, pulling from this low, from here, we made it right off the 886 as well, and we shot off. So let's see if we got another move that's similar to this one here, and we get that continuation to the upside here, where we see something like that. So just trying to draw some correlation between these two moves here, and compare it to this right now. And when you pull the fib in the opposite direction, you got a spot on call to the 2272 for that high there. And then when you pull to this move here, it almost hit the 2272. It was pretty close. I don't really care about being perfect. As long as we're in the ballpark, that's pretty spot on. It went up to about 160, and the 2272 is sitting at 176. That's good enough for me. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be partially correct. All you need is a piece. All you need is a piece in this market. So we'll draw it here. And what if the next move takes us to this point here, where we make it somewhere in the ballpark of the 2272? So let's see. And that would be at that 329 billion mark. So let's see. I mean, we'll touch back with this chart with time. We'll definitely keep this chart in the back of our mind and think about this, but something to take note of for sure. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. Seems like the 886 on these pullbacks were significant moves, and the 2272s are calling the next targets. So it called this next one, and then it almost called this one to the T. It was just off by, it was from 160, around roughly 160 to 176. So it's not off by that much. This one was exactly to 2276 or 2272. I'm sorry. I remain very bullish on Bitcoin and Bitcoin related assets. This is definitely, in my opinion, a buying opportunity, not financial advice, but I could definitely see a significant move to the upside. I wouldn't doubt that we can see mid 100s, maybe 160, 170. If things get crazy, I think we could see over 200,000. Depends on how sustainable the move is, how good the economy is looking, how inflation's looking, and the overall sentiment. I could definitely see people getting shaken out in this last move, and then people FOMOing in once we start hitting all-time highs, and you start seeing all those articles and news events, and that's when you're going to start seeing your coworkers talking about Bitcoin, people that don't know anything about Bitcoin talking about Bitcoin. That's when you got to start getting a little worried. But right now, when there's extreme fear, that's when you should be scooping up as much as possible. When you start seeing the random people talking about crypto and buying meme coins and buying Bitcoin, that's when you should start getting a little concerned and start looking, hey, where are we at on the extreme fear greed index and start looking at the pi cycle top. Start looking at all those things, because that's that should be an indicator on its own. When people are talking about that stuff, I mean, that lets you know, hey, top could be coming pretty soon. So, and that brings us to our last point, where we see the pi cycle top, and you can see we crossed here. The red was underneath the green. You can see the red go above it. That called the top right there when they touched and started crossing. That called that first top here in 2017. And you can see them just running together, and then you can see it touched, but it didn't cross here. That called the top here. So we're anticipating the same thing. And if this indicator happens to be correct, we are nowhere near the top right now. That's all I'm saying. If this indicator is correct, we are nowhere near the top. I mean, we're literally underneath the red right now. As you can see, when we're underneath the red, there's usually large moves that come after, once we break back above the red. When we break back above the red, there's large moves that come following that. So let's see what happens since we're underneath the red now. As you can see, it seems like they're starting to regress little by little. And I think the red won't touch the green, but it'll get close enough. And that's going to be the top. Once they get as close as possible without touching, I think that's going to be your top for this cycle. So hopefully we get a, Q3, Q4 top, something later. So it gives Bitcoin time to rally up and run through its full cycle. But you have to look at the unemployment and inflation. So you need to watch what the Fed's doing, understand the Fed, understand monetary policy, and use the Fed watch tool as well. There's different things that you can use to help guide you in the right direction. We're also waiting for the Fed to, end quantitative tightening, because right now they started reducing their balance sheet less than they were, but they're still reducing it. So we want to see them eventually stop reducing completely, and then you want to see them start to add to their balance sheet. And that's when you can start seeing the meme craze, and you can start seeing the crazy coins going absolutely bonkers. That's what we're waiting for right now. I think everything's looking pretty good. I think this is just a shakeout, but I'm excited to see what the future holds for Bitcoin. Still remain very bullish. Not financial advice on any of this, and I'll see you in the next one.